afterwards. So
Yeah.
Rabbi Adlerstein, whenever you're ready.
I got rid of it. I am almost ready. If I can get my screen back.
I'm assuming you have no problem that after the share, being we're recording it, we can post it online on the shul site?
Sure, sure.
Thank you very much. So
My
Mark,
pleasure.
you heard the okay?
Yeah. Okay. Okay. You about ready to roll?
Yep, gone. Thank you very much.
Okay. So first of all, thank you for the invitation, for arranging this, and for opening it up to the greater public after it gets recorded and posted. You'll have to excuse my cough. I understand there's a little bit of a bug going around, which I seem to have caught, and nothing much I can do about the coughing. Bezos Hashem, I hope it'll just stay that way and not get any worse. Okay, what I'm going to do is to go through various parts of the Haggadah, skipping around, although generally going in order, certainly not covering anything more than a tiny fraction of what there is out there. It's such a wealth of material because indeed, Leil Seder is the opportunity each year in which we renew our commitment to HaKadosh Baruch Hu by reviewing the lessons of Emunah, of who HaKadosh Baruch Hu is, of what he wants from us, of what we're about, of what Torah is about, what mitzvahs are about. And we somehow have to compact it all in to a couple of hours at Leil HaSeder. So what you folks are doing is really the only logical way of approaching it, and that is by starting the process in advance and examining some of the material in the Haggadah in greater depth. I will be sharing material from various kinds of meforshim, although generally from the deeper Balei Machshava. We'll start off with something that I think has particular meaning this year. Very few of us walk into shul Shabbos morning, stand at the door, and start singing. Karbonot Shacharit Kriyat HaTorah Musaf Mincha Suda Shlishit. Yet, we do this before we start the Seder. We look at a table of contents and we sing what it is that we're going to be doing in the next couple of hours. Why does the Seder start with the Simanei HaSeder, with a list of topics that we're going to include and events that we're going to live through in the night of the Seder? There's a beautiful Sfas Emes who explains that the word Seder itself is one of the most important themes of what we're doing the night of Pesach. See, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has his rules. We live with rules of natural law, and we at times make great progress in understanding those laws. And we can, if we are not too narrow in our vision, understand that the same way that the rules that govern the physical universe, there are rules that govern HaKadosh Baruch Hu's universe, metaphysical laws, laws that have to do with HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Hanhaga. And the rules about what people would need to receive Geula were roundly broken by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when he took us out of Mitzrayim, all of us were undeserving. We had no mitzvahs. We had no capital that we could call upon, no chips to call in. And yet HaKadosh Baruch Hu looked at the objections straight in the eye, as he did later at the Yam Suf, when the Malachim said, Halalu Ovdei Avodah Zarah, V'halalu Ovdei Avodah Zarah. And yet HaKadosh Baruch Hu ignored all of that and decided to go ahead with Yetzias Mitzrayim anyway. In other words, says the Sfas Emes, what HaKadosh Baruch Hu did is tear up the rules, his own seder, his own rules of how the world should be governed metaphysically. Every year, says the Sfas Emes, what we do is try to justify HaKadosh Baruch Hu's initial decision. When he decided to tear up those rules, he was announcing an investment in the future, that indeed there was a difference between a Klal Yisrael and Mitzrayim, and that by taking Klal Yisrael out of Mitzrayim at the time, it would lead to great things in the millennia in the future. Starting with only 7 weeks from there, with the Kabbalah Satorah. What we do each year is to say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you did the right thing. And we are going to add Seder, restore Seder to your universe by showing that the investment paid off. There's another side to this. That's the emphasis that Nesiva Shalom, the Slonim Rebbe, places on the word Pesach itself. The word Pesach means to skip, dilug, to skip over. It's the same idea, really, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu normally has a sequence of events that is necessary before people can elevate themselves level after level, before a nation can elevate itself to the point that they can become his people, that they are worthy of redemption. HaKadosh Baruch Hu skipped over all of his own rules and decided to do away with them and to take us out of Mitzrayim anyway. It is an enormously comforting idea that when we look at ourselves, especially this year, in a world that's been turned topsy-turvy, and we understand not the slightest in what's going on or what we could be doing to end what we see around us, but conscious of the fact that, like most of the world, we have messed up, but we don't know where the light at the end of the tunnel is going to be, when it is going to come. But what we can know is that Pesach stands for the idea that HaKadosh Baruch Hu at times will disregard all of the rules that he has set up for the conduct, the spiritual conduct of his nation in the world, and just decide to go with it because of his confidence in Bnei Yisrael. Okay. We'll skip to Holach Ma'anya. It's the only part of the Seder that introduces some Aramaic. Rav Ovadia used to say that the Gemara in Shabbos has a dialogue in which somebody chides one of the Amoraim for davening in Aramaic, since the Malachim supposedly are ein mashgichim b'lashon Aramis. They don't pay attention to Aramaic. So why was he davening? Why was he praying in Aramaic? And the Samara said the reason is because when you daven for a chola, the Shechina is there. The Shechina is there, and you don't need Malachim. And where the Shechina is there, and you don't need Malachim, you can use Aramaic. So Rav Ovadia said the night of the Seder is the same thing. We can use Aramaic because we are confident that the Shechina is there with us. Rav Elchanan Wasserman was asked about the continuing popularity of the blood libel. I think the last time I mentioned this Rav Elchanan was a couple of years ago. It was already a little bit embarrassing. There hadn't been any blood libels in the 21st century, and the last one in the 20th century was I think back in the teens or the 20s, except for Abbas's doctoral dissertation. But here we are, 2020, and the blood libel again is at the top of the news with a distinguished Italian artist by the name of Gasparo, who just introduced a large painting of the murder by the Jews of Simon of Trent. So the blood libel has still not gone away. Rav Elchanan was asked, how could it be that something that has absolutely no basis in fact has such longevity? How is it that it is so pervasive in history and refuses to go away? Rav Elchanan said, the Gemara says in Shabbos that sheker ein lo raglayim. Sheker has no leg to stand on. And a corollary of that is that if a sheker persists, it's because there's a little bit of emes, a little bit of truth, even to a sheker. Where is the truth behind the blood libel? Said Rav Elchanan, it is in Mechiras Yosef, where the Shvatim took the Kesonas Pasim of Yosef and they dipped it in blood. From that came the kiyum for the future of the blood libel. There is one other remez to that at the beginning of the Haggadah, and that is karpas. Now there are a lot of drushas about karpas and what the word means and samach perach and all of that. Rav Hershel Schechter is found of saying that he finds great difficulty in these drushas because karpas is an Arabic word and he just refuses to do drushas on Arabic. But karpas is also a Hebrew word. Chur, karpas, utecheles. We remember that from the Megillah. It seems like an eternity ago. So karpas is fine wool. And as Rabbeinu Manoach, who says that the karpas of the Seder is the fine wool of the Kesonas Pasim that the Shvatim dipped in blood and took back to their father. And we incorporate it in the Haggadah to remind ourselves of all of the troubles we have had in the course of history that stemmed from our Averos Bein Adam L'Chaveiro. And the makor, the source of all of those Averos, just like there is a shoresh of our Averos Bein Adam L'Makom, and that's the Cheda Egel, the shoresh of all Averos Bein Adam L'Makom is Mechiras Yosef. And we include this remez in the Haggadah to remind us of all of the troubles in history that we brought upon ourselves because of that. Okay, we move along to Manishtana. Just one short ha'ara on Manishtana. The Chassam Sofer says that the third of the four questions is not born of any mitzvah. It's not something that has to do with any of the parts of the avoda of the Korban Pesach and Leil Pesach, and it was put in there. It was put in there the two times that we dip in the course of the Seder were put in there specifically aimed at children who have done what children are supposed to do. They have spent months studying all of the material about Pesach, and they come into the night of the Seder feeling, come on, we've done this already. Do we have to do this again? What have we been doing in school for the last 2 months? We've gone over all the parshios of Shibud Mitzrayim and Yitzias Mitzrayim, line by line with Mefarshim. What more is there to add? Says the Chassam Sofer that the Chachamim specifically put this remez into the Seder, the two tibulim, the 2 times that we dip, because this was something that the kids would be unprepared for since they've been concentrating on legitimate text. And when they encounter this, they wake up again, and they too will assist in the asking questions. And this is important, says the Chassam Sofer, because there is an element of absolute equality that is part of the Seder. That all of us, kulanu chachamim, kulanu nevonim, it doesn't matter. All of us in this regard are equal, that we have a need on the night of the Seder to review the material, to be mesaper b'yetzias Mitzrayim, to thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu for everything that he did for us, to understand the implications in emunah of everything that we're reading, and there can be no exceptions. Not the Einu Yodei L'Shol, and not the kids who've gone to school and know everything. All people should be participating in the discussion. The answer to Manishtana may never come. There's some Meforshim who say we never answer the question. There's some who try to see an answer here and there. One of the places where the answer may come is in Avodim Hayinu, the paragraph that we read in response to the 4 questions. The Be'er Yosef says that Vayotzienu Hashem Elokeinu b'yad chazaka addresses in particular the question about haseva, of why we lean. That sounds a bit puzzling, and we can increase the puzzle by pointing to a midrash that says that Vayasev Hashem es ha'am, that Hashem causing the people when they left Mitzrayim to go round about is related to the word haseva, leaning. Now, aside from the fact that some of the letters in the Shorish happen to coincide, it's not so easy to see what the overlap is between Vayasev and haseva. The Be'er Yosef has a beautiful thought. He says that by the time we got around to the end of the 10 Makos, Paro was a defeated man, and he had come to grips with the idea that the Jews were going to leave. He was ready to send them out with an honor guard. No problems, no recriminations, just get out of here. Why would that have been so terrible? HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided that that can't be. Paro is not going to let the Jews go on his terms, but he took them out biyad chazaka. Vayotzienu biyad chazaka. Why is that? Because if Paro had been permitted to say goodbye respectfully to the Jews, there would have been a danger that Klal Yisrael would have looked back and remembered, besides the hundreds of years of agony, they would have remembered the fact that in the last hours before they left, they had achieved some dignity, and people looked to them in a different way, and they were prepared, the Egyptians were prepared to see them as equals. That would have been terribly dangerous for the Jewish future, because it would have meant that Klal Yisrael was not cutting the umbilical cord with the Egyptians entirely. There would have been some entangling alliance still possible. Vayotzienu Hashem Elokeinu biyad chazaka. HaKadosh Baruch Hu took us out on his terms, not on Paro's terms, so that there would be no such connection possible between the Jews and the Mitzrayim. And that is why we're able to have haseva. We're able to sit and recline as free men because HaKadosh Baruch Hu took us out in a way that gave us our absolute freedom. Had he not done that, our freedom would have been marred and the haseva would not have been so well deserved. We say kol hamarbe l'saper b'yitzias Mitzrayim harei ze meshubach. We learn the drashas about whether we talk about Yetzias Mitzrayim b'yamim, b'leilos, and one drasha is that we speak in Yetzias Mitzrayim lahavi limos hamashiach. The Noam Elimelech, Rav Elimelech of Lajinsk, takes lahavi limos hamashiach quite literally. I think most people have heard the idea that the Jewish holiday is never a commemoration. We don't do holidays as a kind of hallmark card commemorating events of the past. We don't live with memory, even though memory is important. The Sfarim HaKadoshim, and some that are not Sfarim HaKadoshim, the down-to-earth Sfarim as well, emphasize the idea that the calendar is like a closed railroad line. I think this was the mashal of Simcha Zisel of Kelm, that each year is a circuit, and the train stops at different points along the way. At each station, you disembark, and while you're at the station house, you partake of some of what is there in that locale. On Pesach, at the Pesach station, you partake of Cherus. In Shavuos, you partake of revelation. The idea is that there are different oros, as they're called in Kabbalah and in Hasidus, different oros that are available, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes available to us every Yontif. One of the reasons Pesach is so important to us is that we intuitively sense that the oros of Cherus, those oros of freedom, which can translate to every individual as a potentiation of our capacity to break the bonds that hold each one of us as individuals captive, and that we can further promote our well-being by liberating ourselves, by breaking the shackles of some of the things that hold us back. There's a price that you pay. The Sfarim write that to get access to these oros, the price that you pay is Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. It is the retelling of the story, the spending of the time, lovingly repeating the Haggadah, dissecting the Haggadah, pulling out more meaning from it. That is what allows us to access the oros of the evening. Says the Noam Elimelech, these oros literally are Mevi Limos HaMashiach. The Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim that we do brings these oros, and these oros bring closer the Goel Tzedek of Klal Yisrael. The Bnei Yisachar points to a Zohar, which says that when we are marbe in Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, the Malachim in Shemayim rejoice. Bnei Yisachar says, I don't get it so much. Gratitude is important, but it's not the hardest thing to come by. Why are the Malachim overjoyed when they see Klal Yisrael spending time on Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim? So Bnei Yisachar explains that Bnei Yisachar explains that it's very difficult to get overly enthusiastic about being relieved of the pain of oppression when you're sitting in a different kind of oppression, which for the most part of Jewish history has been the case. There have not been that many Pesach celebrations when we have looked around and found ourselves free of external enemies and free of dangers lurking closer than we would like. So why are we so enthusiastic about the end of an oppression that occurred more than 3,500 years ago? It could only be, says the Bnei Yissaschar, because we understood that the real tafkid, the real purpose of Yetzias Mitzrayim was to stand at Har Sinai 7 weeks later and receive the Torah. When the Malachim see us enthusiastic in retelling the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim, they understand that our enthusiasm is based on the fact that what we received as a consequence of leaving Mitzrayim is something immutable, unchangeable, and that can never be taken away from us. And it'll be with us in the best of times and the worst of times. And the Malachim salute us for our acuity of vision. The four sons. We mentioned when we started a theme from the Slonim Rebbe, the idea that Pesach means dilug, skipping over the usual rules. The Slonim is not the only one who makes this observation. Many other Svarim do the same. One of those is Rav Hutner in Maimare Pachad Yitzchok, who questions the story of the Arba Banim. We precede the Arba Banim with a special Birchas HaTorah. Baruch HaMakom, Baruch Hu, Baruch Shanasan Torah Le'ama Yisrael, Baruch Hu. We said Birchas HaTorah hopefully in the morning. Why is it necessary for there to be a special Birchas HaTorah before this point of the Haggadah? Why, asks Rav Hutner, do we include the Rasha in this retelling of the four sons? The Rasha seems to be the son for whom it didn't work and who shouldn't be part of this picture at all. If this is a Birchas HaTorah, we have rules about whom we teach Torah to. And the halacha is that you do not teach Torah to a bona fide Rasha. Why is the Rasha here included? Not only included, but he's called one of the four Banim. We underscore the fact that he too is a son, even as we call him a Rasha. So Rav Hutner, along the same lines as we said before, says that Pesach is about Dilug. Yad Chazaka is about Dilug. The Yad Chazaka means HaKadosh Baruch Hu strong-arming his own rules and deciding to disregard them and do what he wanted. And that, says Rav Hutner, is bound to raise eyebrows. Why is HaKadosh Baruch Hu not only bending the rules, but tearing them up entirely? There will be pushback from that. And part of that pushback is the Rasha, who says, you guys got to be kidding. You see any significance to this? Because all of this comes from Yad HaChazaka, says Rav Hutner, the answer we give to the Rasha also has to be a Yad Chazaka kind of answer. And that's why, despite the fact that we're trying to be solicitous to everybody around the table, the Rasha gets afata hakeyeshenod. We give him an answer that blunts his teeth, because the source of all of this is the Yad Chazaka of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It was a wonderful, wonderful darshan. It was not just a darshan, he happened to be a community leader in Poland in the time between the wars, who wrote a marvelous sefer called HaMedrash v'HaMa'asa. Rav Yecheskel Lipschitz is his name, and he was the head of Aguda, the largest Aguda in Europe, Aguda of Poland, until he was nifter in the 1930s. He takes a dim view about the Arba Banim. He says they're all wrong. None of them get it right, including the Chacham. The Chacham over-intellectualizes. The Chacham is being so much of a litvak and analyzing the details of the Seder that he's missing much of the beauty. So he says something that is, I think, beautiful and profound at the same time. He says, we introduce the Arba Banim with this special Birchas HaTorah. Baruch Hamakom Baruch Hu. Think of those two phrases. Baruch Hamakom means Baruch, blessed is the one who is everywhere. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu can be found every place you look, like all those famous children's songs. We call it in the language of philosophy, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's immanence. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu is to be found immediately and everywhere. No sooner have we said Baruch HaMakom that we say Baruch Hu. Hu, in the third person, is mysterious. It says nothing about him.
It's a narration.
And emphasizes the idea that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is unknowable, unreachable, and that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is, again to use the appropriate philosophical term, transcendent. This is a contrast that Jews have to live with if they're thinking Jews, and we do it in more ways than most of us realize. Every time we make a bracha, we include this tension between the two extremes of what HaKadosh Baruch Hu seems to be. On the one hand, we say Baruch Atah, addressing HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the second person. When you address someone in the second person, you're talking about somebody who is within grasp, who's immediate, who's in front of you. No sooner do you mention Hashem's name that the rest of the bracha switches to third person. In 7th grade English, we would not get away with a sentence like that. And yet we do this in every bracha. The idea is that there is no way of escaping from this tension, not contradiction. Both of them are truths that we have to live with at the same time. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is both immediate and available, but lest we think that we can bring him down to our level, we remind ourselves that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is so far beyond human grasp. It is entirely transcendent. Is there any place where the two meet? And the answer is absolutely yes. They meet in Torah. In Torah, you can feel, you can detect, you can experience aspects both of the immediacy of Hashem and of how HaKadosh Baruch Hu rises above everything. So says Rabbi Cheskel Lipschitz that we start off this recounting of the 4 sons that HaKadosh Baruch Hu mentions in the Torah by giving the reason for this enormous spread in reaction of 4 sons in history to the events of Yetzias Mitzrayim. It's because Baruch HaMakom Baruch Hu, because Hashem is both immanent and transcendent. And Baruch Shenasan Torah Li'amo Yisrael, HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes the two meet within Torah. Within Torah, you're going to find all of the different strains, including those things that conflict with each other, seem to conflict with each other, all the tensions. And that leads to Baruch Hu. That itself leads to a certain amount of obscurity, of not getting the message entirely. And therefore, we wind up with 4 sons with very, very different reactions.
They also meet in Yerushalayim. From the point of view, you can have Baruch HaMakom. The Makom is also Yerushalayim, where both strains meet.
I'll drink to that.
We should all drink that together.
I mean, in person.
There.
Okay. Say ulamad. Say ulamad. The Regina Rebbe has a very short observation. It says to change madrega, you have to move from complacency to be open to change, and that doesn't happen without observing others. Say ulamad is an important principle in life. The Maharal says something similar in Derech Chaim Anavos, where the Mishnah starts, say ulamad, go out and see what is the best way, the best derech for a person. And the Maharal says, why say ulamad? He says, because there's some things that you don't get by opening up a Torah book. There are some Torah truths that you learn simply by opening your eyes and looking and using your seicha. The Haggadah tells us about the Haftacha, the Nevuah that Avram Avinu had, the communication with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in which he was told, Ger yiyeh zaracha, your children will be gerim for hundreds of years until they are finally released. And the Slonma Rebbe in the Siva Shalom says, the idea of Ger yiyeh zaracha is something that applies in all generations to all people as individuals. That our neshamos, in effect, are gerim. They come from a place where they were happy, and they are put into this world where they are oppressed by events in this world, particularly by their subjugation to the Yetzer Hara. The redemption from the gerus starts at midnight, at Chatzos Halayla, at the darkest point. And it proceeds by people subjugating themselves to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, by giving up some of the things that interfere with their connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which he says for many people includes three things, namely, Bechor Paro, Bechor Shifcha, and Bechor Behema. Bechor always means that which is choice, that which is beloved to us. The first son has a special place in the heart of parents. So Bechor refers not only to a firstborn son, but the Sfarim say it means those things that we reserve a special place for in our hearts and are sometimes the hardest things to be able to give up in the service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But to climb to higher madregas, that's in fact what we need to do. And we do that in three ways. Some of these interests and elements that we hold close to our hearts are like Bechor Paro. A Paro is a person of stature and importance. So some of these interests that we gradually have to give up in the service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu have some importance. Some are like Bechor Shifcha. They are choice things in our minds, but they really have no intrinsic worth. And unfortunately, for many people, some of them are Bechor Behema. There's some things that are important to us that we don't talk about in public. We don't mention to our friends or families or children. Things that we value for ourselves that are downright embarrassing, that come from a nefesh habahamis. Vayareu osanu hamitzrim v'yanunu. Rav Gedalia Shor Zatzal said, Vayareu osanu hamitzrim can be translated as they turned us into evil people in our own eyes. they convinced us that we were worthless and evil. Says of Gedalia Shor, a person who has no sense of his own worth, of his own greatness, a person who thinks of himself as beyond redemption, a person who thinks of himself as evil, is going to have a much harder time resisting doing an Aveira. What's a little bit more evil to a person who's already evil to begin with? So turning us into evil people was a great way not only to enslave us and keep us subjugated, but it was a great way to mire us in the Avodah Zarah of Mitzrayim and to get our people to gradually give up all of the distance that they had previously maintained between themselves and Egyptian culture. Again, the Nesiva Shalom turns this into a theme that you can't be evil in your own eyes. One of the most important parts of Avodas Hashem is the feeling of just how important you are as an individual. How HaKadosh Baruch Hu has so much riding on you, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu views you as a son and daughter. The famous line in Mishlei, Musar b'ni al timos. An earlier Slunma Rebbe said, Musar, the best kind of Musar is b'ni al timos. B'ni, you are my son, so don't do things that are disgusting. What would not be considered disgusting for somebody else, for you who are a son of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is disgusting. Keep in mind your closeness with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that your neshama came as a chelek aloka milmala, and that will help in rising to higher madregas. When Moshe and Aaron stood before Paro, and they began the preliminary nisim to kind of set the stage. There's a little bit of a trailer of coming attractions. There's a medrash that when Aaron's mata swallowed up all the other matos, it did not look any heavier for its efforts. Many of us wish we could say the same thing after eating cholent on Shabbos, but that doesn't always occur. What's the idea? Why was this important? Why is it mentioned in a medrash? The Ksav Sofer says the following, which I think was also a short observation that can add a lot of comfort to people in the troubling times that we're in. Because if you take a look at the blockbuster miracles, the kind of stuff that made Cecil B. DeMille famous, right? They don't last very long. The longest running miracle of Shalom B'derech HaTeva that completely ignored the rules of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's natural law that he set down at Brias Olam was the mun. That lasted quite a few years, lasted longer than anything else. But in the end, the mun was a couple of decades, and that was it. All nisim that are Shalom B'derech HaTeva have a very finite time limit on them. The reason for that is pretty obvious. It's because HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a great investment in natural law. They were designed very, very cleverly, for very good purposes, and he does not like suspending them. Every time they're suspended, among other things, and this is not the only objection to it, it decreases the amount of bechira that we have. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu ignores natural law very sparingly, and not too often. That is not the case with Nisim Shalom B'derech HaTeva. Nisim shelo b'derech hateva can go on and on and on for centuries and for millennia. Says the Ksav Sofer, the remez in what Aaron's Mata did was to suggest that even though the swallowing up of the other matos was shelo b'derech hateva, but there was room being left for a different kind of ness, whose presence would not be as obvious, would not be as bolate. And that kind of ness would continue well after the drama of Yetzias Mitzrayim had ended. There's a similar story, related story, I should say, about the Chavetz Chaim. Was once examined by a doctor who was a maskil, and the doctor, in the course of the examination, began cluing the Chavetz Chaim in on some of his reservations. And he said, you know, I've begun to doubt divine providence. I've begun to doubt Hashgachas Hashem. And Chavetz Chaim didn't respond. He said, you know, it's not just Hashgacha. I've begun to doubt the existence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. So the Chavetz Chaim replied, and he said, that's interesting. I've begun to doubt whether you're a doctor. So he said, well, what do you mean? How could you doubt that I'm a doctor? You're sitting here in my office. My diploma is up on the wall. There's no question that I'm a doctor. You can doubt whether I'm a good doctor, but you can't doubt that I'm a doctor. So the Chavetz Chaim said, wait, that diploma dates back 20 years ago when you took some exam and they gave you a degree. How do I know that you're still a doctor today? So the doctor said, well, that's not the way you become a doctor or remain a doctor. You prove your mettle once through difficult years of training and through hard exams, and that makes you a doctor for life. So the Chavetz Chaim said, don't you understand? The same is true of the Ribono Shel Olam. Does he have to prove himself in every generation, in every year, to every person on demand? HaKadosh Baruch Hu went through that demonstration. He did it in style and in spades. And every year we sit down at the Seder and remember those events, and though they serve for us as HaKadosh Baruch Hu's diploma on the wall. Okay, we're getting to the end. There's essentially only one other point in the Haggadah that I want to cover before we run out of time. And that is not the Eser Makos themselves, but something we often overlook because it comes so late in Magid, and that is the Tzach, Adash, and Bachav. And there's a beautiful maral. There are many beautiful marals on Pesach and Haggadah, but this one points out something that many people may have missed during Kriyas HaTorah. Remember when we used to have Kriyas HaTorah? The breakdown of the Eser Makos into 3 distinct groups. And it works something like this. With the first Makkah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe and Aaron, go down to the river and wait respectfully for Paro. And that's what happens. The second Makkah, they are a little bit more forthright. HaKadosh Baruch Hu instructs them to go to Paro. They don't wait for him on his terms. They march into the palace and they tell him, round 2 is coming. And 3, just do it. Now, what would you expect happens after the first 3? 4 should be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 should all be without warning, without any further ado. Paro had his chance the first couple of times, but that's not what happens. Makkah number 4, go down to the river, wait for Paro. 5, go to Paro. 6, just do it. 7, go down and wait for Paro. 8, go to Paro. 9, no announcement. And 10 is in a category by itself, having been promised right from day one. There's another part of this Seder, and that is in each group of 3, there is a kind of paragraph sentence that stands out for drama, for something that was realized by somebody in Paro's court. After the first 3 makos, what is it? That etzba Elokim hi. This is not the work of Khartoumim, of magicians, of sorcerers. This is the finger of God. In the second set, 4, 5, and 6, there is an exclamation that now you will know that there is Hashem bekerev haaretz. And the third set is marked by a characterization that this time you'll see, excuse me, kol mofsai. You will see the extent of all of the mofsim that I can do. Maral says that the purpose of the 10 makos was not to get us out of Egypt. HaKadosh Baruch Hu could have done that with makos bechoros on day 1. It would have brought the Egyptians to their knees, and they would have let us go. The purpose of the makos was to instruct Klal Yisrael and to instruct the world about the nature of who he is. And there are 3 key ingredients of the basics of knowing what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is. In medieval philosophy, they were called Mitzius, Hashgacha, and Yecholes. One is the very existence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that was demonstrated by the first 3 makos. Etzba Elokim hi. In the second set, with the sharper differentiation between the lot of the Egyptians and the lot of Klal Yisrael, where you saw that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was skipping individuals and treating Jews and Egyptians differently. You saw HaKadosh Baruch Hu's hashgacha, providence reaching down to man and differentiating between different people. And the third set was Yecholes, to show that Hashem's ability is unlike the abilities of all the ancient gods, each of which was in charge of some different power or capacity, but that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has no limit to any of his abilities, and all abilities are found within him. So that, in a nutshell, is Yitzchok, Adash, and Bachav. One final note to this, and that is that Bachav is not spelled the way we would want it to be. Think of the last group, Bachav. What does that stand for? Barad, Arbe, Choshech, and what should the next letter be if we follow our instincts? Should be a mem for Makas Bechoros. But instead, Rav Yehuda just refers to it as Bechoros, not Makas Bechoros. Halo Davarhu, there has to be a reason. Rav Hutner, in Mamare Pachad Yitzchok, Siman Tezvav, says, Bereshis bara Elokim. Chazal say, Bereshis b'shvil Reshis. One of the definitions of Reshis is b'shvil Yisrael. That means, says Rav Hutner, in some sense, Klal Yisrael was with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's mind, in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's plan, close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, while the world had not yet been created, while there was no planet to put them on and no people to populate it, there already was a Klal Yisrael that had gelled in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's mind that was part of his divine plan. In the course of history, the specialness, the special role, the special mission of Klal Yisrael would best be understood, unfortunately, only by contrasting Klal Yisrael with others. It would be what we tell our children all the time, again and again, and I'm sure this will come up at the Seder for those of you who are privileged enough to have children at the Seder or grandchildren. That where are the Greeks? Where are the Romans? Where are the Persians? Where everybody else? What has happened to all of them? But we've survived. The role of Klal Yisrael, in our experience, is mostly built on makas bechoros. It's on the killing, the destruction of the false bechoros of the rest of the world, of the bechoros of power, of war, of gaiva. Those bechoros get killed periodically, and Klal Yisrael manages to shine for its difference. But says Rav Hutner, that is not the way it will always be. In La'asid Lavo, the specialness of Klal Yisrael will not come from makas bechoros, of killing the false firstborn of other cultures, but simply the kernel, beauty, truth of Klal Yisrael that was around from the first moments of Brias HaOlam. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give all of you a Chag Kosher V'Sameach. We should all experience, by the time it comes around next week, a time of unexpected and welcome Geula. We'll take Geula in any manner or form, but as long as we're speaking of Geula, we might as well hold out for Geula Shlema, and we should all join together and this year for a Korban Pesach out of quarantine in the company of Mashiach Tzidkenu.
Okay, Rabbi Adlerstein, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Great pleasure.
Thank you.
As you said, hopefully next year in person, whether in Malei Adumim, Yerushalayim, or Har HaBayit. We look forward to it. Mark, thank you very much for all your efforts for recording. At the moment,
No
there are
problem.
no room arranged. If I manage to arrange anything, then I'll send out notices. Everyone have a
Perfect.
wonderful day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Vote
you.
for Har HaBayit.